Picture this: a floating city worth $13 billion, carrying 80 aircraft valued at $6 billion more, gets caught in a hurricane with 150-mile-per-hour winds and waves, the height of a 6-story building. The ship weighs 100,000 tons. The jets on deck are chained down with cables thinner than your wrist. And somehow, when the storm passes, everything's still there. Not a single plane in the ocean. Not a single sailor overboard. Sounds impossible, right? It's not. It's Tuesday for the U.S. Navy. So how do aircraft carriers, these absolutely massive floating airports, survive the worst weather on the planet without turning into the world's most expensive artificial reef? Keep watching, because the answer involves more than just really good chains. Let's start with the obvious question. Why don't they just avoid the storms? We have weather satellites. We can see hurricanes from space. Just steer around them. Problem solved. Yeah, not quite. Aircraft carriers don't get to pick their parking spots based on the Weather Channel forecast. When a carrier strike group gets deployed to the Western Pacific during typhoon season, they don't pack up and sail to the Caribbean for better weather. They stay on station. The mission doesn't pause for precipitation. But here's where it gets interesting. The Navy actually has a whole science around storm survival that most people never hear about. It's not just about building a really big boat and hoping for the best. It's about physics, engineering, and some genuinely clever thinking that's been refined over decades of getting absolutely hammered by Mother Nature. First, let's talk about the ship itself. The Nimitz-class carrier is 1,092 feet long. That's longer than the Eiffel Tower is tall. It displaces about 100,000 tons when fully loaded. For perspective, that's roughly equivalent to 400 Statues of Liberty. This thing is genuinely enormous. And that size matters. A lot. In the maritime world, there's this concept called seakeeping. It's basically a ship's ability to operate effectively in rough seas. And when it comes to seakeeping, bigger is almost always better. Why? Because of something called period of encounter. Here's how it works. Waves have a rhythm. They come in regular intervals, rising and falling. Ships also have a natural rolling period based on their size and shape. When a ship's rolling period matches the wave period, you get resonance. And resonance is bad. Really bad. It's like pushing someone on a swing at just the right time. Each push amplifies the motion until things get out of control. Small ships and big waves can hit this resonance and roll 40, 50, even 60 degrees. That's terrifying. Anything not bolted down becomes a projectile. People get hurt. Equipment gets destroyed. But carriers? Their sheer size means their natural rolling period is so long that it almost never matches the wave period, even in massive storms. While a destroyer might be rolling 30 degrees and making everyone on board question their life choices, a carrier in the same seas might roll 5 degrees, maybe 8, if it's really nasty. Still, 5 degrees doesn't sound like much until you remember there are F-18 Super Hornets on the deck. Each one costs about $70 million. An E-2 Hawkeye? About $80 million. That new F-35C? Try $115 million. You've got billions of dollars worth of aircraft sitting on a football field that's tilting back and forth in 40-foot seas. So how do you keep them from sliding off into the ocean like toys off a tilted table? The answer is chains. Lots and lots of chains. But not just any chains. The Navy uses something called tie-down chains. These aren't the chains you'd use to tow a car. They're specifically designed for aircraft securement, made from high-tensile steel that can handle enormous loads. Each attachment point on an aircraft can handle roughly 30,000 pounds of force, and each aircraft gets multiple attachment points. An F-18 in a standard tied-down configuration uses about 12 chains, 6 on the main landing gear, 6 on the nose gear and other hardpoints. Each chain is tensioned to specific values measured in foot-pounds. Too loose, and the aircraft can shift and damage itself or other planes. Too tight, and you can actually damage the landing gear or airframe. But here's where it gets wild. The flight deck crew doesn't just chain down the aircraft and call it a day. They have to account for the storm's direction, the wind speed, the sea state, and the ship's orientation. The heavy ones get moved to the center of the deck where motion is least extreme. The lighter ones get doubled up on chains. And those chains? They get inspected constantly. Before the storm, during if possible, and immediately after, a single weak link could mean a 30-ton aircraft breaks loose and becomes a battering ram, smashing into other planes, equipment, even people. Modern carrier aircraft are built tough, but they're not designed to sit on a pitching deck in hurricane-force winds for days at a time. Salt spray is corrosive. It eats through protective coatings, gets into engines, corrodes avionics. Everything exposed to the elements takes a beating, so the Navy covers them, not with tarps from Home Depot, but with specialized aircraft covers designed to protect sensitive areas. Engine intakes get plugged. Pitot tubes, the little sensors that measure airspeed, get covered. Canopies get protected. It's like putting a raincoat on a Ferrari, except the raincoat costs thousands of dollars and has to stay on in 100-mile-per-hour winds. Now let's talk about what's happening below deck, because that's where things get really interesting. An aircraft carrier isn't just a flat top with planes on it. It's a floating city with a population of about 5,000 people. And in a storm, that city has to keep functioning. The hangar bay, the massive space below the flight deck where aircraft are stored and maintained, is its own ecosystem during a storm. Planes that can't fit on deck or that need protection get moved down there. But the hangar bay isn't pressurized like the spaces below it. Those giant elevators that move planes between the hangar and flight deck, they're just holes in the ship. Big holes. During heavy seas, water doesn't politely stay on the flight deck. It comes over the bow, crashes onto the deck, and looks for anywhere to go, including down into the hangar bay. The Navy plans for this. The hangar deck has drains, lots of them, and pumps. Powerful pumps that can move thousands of gallons per minute. But water isn't the only problem. Wind is too. In a hurricane, wind isn't just blowing. It's screaming through every opening, every gap, every space it can find. The hangar bay becomes a wind tunnel. Loose tools become missiles. Unsecured equipment becomes hazards, so everything gets secured. Toolboxes get locked down. Equipment gets lashed to bulkheads. Sailors don't just walk around the hangar bay in heavy weather. They move carefully, always holding on to something, always aware that the deck might suddenly tilt 10 degrees without warning. And speaking of the sailors, let's talk about them for a second. Because running a carrier in a storm isn't just about engineering. It's about people doing incredibly difficult, dangerous work in absolutely miserable conditions. Flight deck operations in normal weather are already considered one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. In storm conditions, it's exponentially worse. It's rolling, it's covered in water that's constantly moving. Visibility might be measured in feet, not yards. Wind is strong enough to knock people over or blow them off the deck entirely. So during really bad weather, the flight deck becomes off-limits. Only essential personnel are allowed up there. And even then, only when absolutely necessary. Everyone wears float coats, essentially life jackets built into their gear. They wear goggles to protect their eyes from salt spray. They move in pairs or groups, never alone. But someone still has to check those tie-down chains. Someone has to inspect the aircraft for damage. Someone has to make sure nothing has come loose and is about to turn into a multi-million-dollar disaster. And those someones are usually the youngest sailors on the ship. The ones who joined the Navy thinking they'd see the world and instead find themselves clipped to the deck with a safety harness, fighting to stay upright in winds that would be considered tornado strength on land. Now here's something most people don't know. The carrier itself is designed to handle the storm by moving with it, not against it. This is where the ship's bridge crew becomes absolutely critical. In heavy weather, the carrier will actively maneuver to take the waves at the optimal angle. Usually this means taking them about 30 degrees off the bow, not head-on, which causes excessive pounding and stress on the forward sections. Not beam-on, which would cause severe rolling, but at an angle that lets the ship rise over the waves with minimum stress and motion. The carrier's propulsion system, 4 nuclear reactors generating enough power to light up a city, gives it incredible maneuverability for something so large. It can maintain speeds of over 30 knots even in heavy seas. This isn't about running away from the storm. It's about positioning relative to it. See, a hurricane or typhoon is moving. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow, but always moving. The carrier can adjust its position and speed to minimize time in the worst conditions. If the storm is moving at 15 knots and the carrier can make 25 knots, that's a lot of flexibility for the captain to work with. And that captain, by the way, has access to weather information that would make any meteorologist jealous. The ship's meteorology department, usually called MET, tracks multiple weather systems simultaneously using satellite data, weather buoys, aircraft reconnaissance, and their own observations. They're not guessing. They know what's coming, when it's coming, and how bad it's going to be. But even with perfect information in a ship designed for this, things can still go wrong. In 2019, the U.S. John C. Stennis was operating in the North Arabian Sea when a storm hit that was worse than predicted. Winds exceeded 70 knots. Waves topped 50 feet. Despite all the training, an F-18 broke loose from its tie-downs. The jet, weighing about 32,000 pounds empty, slid across the deck. It collided with another aircraft. Both sustained significant damage. Total cost? Probably north of $50 million. And that's with everything going mostly right. The planes didn't go overboard. Nobody was killed. It could have been catastrophically worse. This is why the Navy takes storm preparation so seriously. It's not paranoia. It's mathematics. You've got billions of dollars in assets, thousands of lives, and the mission all riding on getting this right every single time. But here's the thing that really shows how sophisticated this whole operation is. The carrier isn't alone. A carrier strike group includes cruisers, destroyers, maybe a submarine. All of these ships have to weather the storm together, while maintaining defensive posture. The smaller ships, despite their advanced design, take an absolute beating in heavy weather. Destroyers will roll and pitch dramatically. Cruisers will take green water, actual seawater, not spray, over their bows, essentially buttoning up and riding it out. The carrier becomes the stable platform in the formation. Its size, its power, its seakeeping ability make it the rock around which the other ships can organize. They'll adjust their positions relative to the carrier, maintaining station but allowing for the weather conditions. And through all of this, the carrier has to maintain its defensive capabilities. The radar has to keep running. The weapon systems have to stay operational. The Combat Information Center, the brain of the ship, has to keep tracking everything in the air and on the water. Because storms don't stop potential threats. If anything, they create opportunities for adversaries. This is where the carrier's design really shines. That tall structure on the side of the flight deck, where the bridge and primary flight control are located, is positioned and shaped to minimize wind resistance and protect vital systems. The phased array radars, the communication systems, the navigation equipment, all of it is designed to function in conditions that would shut down most systems. Below decks, the ship is compartmentalized. The backup systems for backup systems. If one section floods, it can be isolated. If one system fails, another takes over. The carrier is designed with redundancy layered on top of redundancy. Power distribution is a perfect example. The ship's electrical grid can be reconfigured on the fly. If damage or flooding cuts power to one section, operators can reroute power from the reactors through alternate pathways. Critical systems like weapons, communications, and propulsion always get priority. But let's get back to those aircraft, because we still haven't covered the real nightmare scenario. What happens if a storm hits while the carrier is conducting flight operations? When there are planes in the air, planes on the catapults, planes on the recovery deck? The answer is organized chaos. The Navy has procedures for emergency recovery operations in deteriorating weather. Every pilot knows them. Every deck crew knows them. They train for this constantly, because when it happens for real, there's no time to figure it out. Aircraft in the air get priority. They have limited fuel. They can't just wait around while the ship secures for storm conditions. So the carrier continues recovery operations as long as physically possible. Pilots are making arrested landings on a deck that's pitching and rolling. The landing signal officers, the people who guide planes onto the deck, are calling corrections based not just on the aircraft's position, but on the deck's motion. It's like trying to land on a runway that's moving in 3 dimensions. Up and down, side to side, tilting and rolling. And you have to do it precisely enough to catch a wire that's only about the width of your landing gear. In deteriorating visibility, with fuel running low, the organized chaos intensifies. Aircraft are chained down as quickly as possible, but not carelessly. Speed matters, but so does doing it right. Meanwhile, planes on the catapults that haven't launched get moved to safe positions. Equipment gets secured. Personnel get below decks. There's a moment during this transition where the carrier is at its most vulnerable. The flight deck is cluttered with aircraft being repositioned, working frantically. The weather is getting worse by the minute. This is when accidents happen if they're going to happen. But the training kicks in. The Navy drills these procedures until they're muscle memory. Every sailor knows their role. Every officer knows the sequence. The choreography of securing a carrier for heavy weather is practiced so often that even in terrible conditions, even when scared, people execute it correctly. And here's something that doesn't get enough credit. The Navy's weather avoidance isn't just reactive. It's predictive, using computer models, historical data, and real-time observations. The meteorology teams can forecast not just where a storm will be, but they're working with information from dozens of specialists. The meteorologist predicting conditions, the air boss coordinating aircraft operations, the chief engineer monitoring the ship's systems. It's a massive collaborative effort, where everyone has to be right, because the cost of being wrong is measured in lives and billions of dollars. Now, after the storm passes, the work isn't over. It's just beginning. Every aircraft has to be inspected. Every tie-down point checked. Every system tested. Salt water is incredibly corrosive, and even with all the protective measures, things get damaged. Engines have to be inspected for water intrusion. Avionics get tested. Airframes get examined for stress fractures or corrosion. It's painstaking work that can take days. And until it's done, those aircraft aren't flying. The ship itself gets a thorough going over too. Antennas that might have been damaged. Radars that might have water intrusion. Deck equipment that took a beating. Everything gets inspected, tested, and repaired if necessary. And through all of this, the carrier has to maintain its mission. Because the world doesn't stop. Because the Navy just weathered a typhoon. There are still operations to conduct. Still missions to fly. Still a presence to maintain. This is the reality of carrier operations. It's not just about having the biggest ship and the best aircraft. It's about having systems and procedures and people who can keep everything working no matter what nature throws at them. From the youngest sailor securing tie-down chains to the captain on the bridge making course corrections, everyone plays a part in making sure that when the storm clears, the carrier is still ready to fight. And that's the real answer to how carriers survive storm season without losing billion-dollar jets. It's not one thing. It's 1,000 things done right. Every time, by thousands of people who've trained for this exact scenario. It's engineering and meteorology, and seamanship and sheer determination all working together. Because in the end, the ocean doesn't care how much your ship costs or how advanced your aircraft are. The storm doesn't check the Navy's budget before deciding how hard to blow. Nature is indifferent. But the US Navy isn't. They've taken the challenge of operating the world's most powerful warships in the world's worst weather and turned it into just another day at the office. A really terrible, dangerous, exhausting day at the office. But just another day nonetheless.